Good afternoon, and thank you for coming to the session. I know fatigue sets in, it's the last day, the last session of the conference. We do hope we will be able to make this meaningful 40 minutes for all of you. Just to kind of state here that this is a very brass tacks kind of a session. We were hoping to pitch it to counselors and administrators who are considering setting up a session. Mr. Siddharth, by walking in, has really made me nervous. We do hope, sir, and others, that this is going to be of some use. I'll start by first introducing my co-panelists. It's my greatest pleasure to present this session with two very senior colleagues. Shivangi, who's a college counselor and the executive director of Ahmedabad International School. She has been in the field of education since past 20 years. She's a UCLA certified counselor, and Ms. Prabha is joining us virtually. She's a student-focused, dedicated educator. She's currently working as a chemistry teacher, dean of studies, and a school counselor at College de Saint-Esprit, Mauritius. I always get the name wrong. So welcome, Prabha. I hope you're able to see and hear us clearly. And I'm Sapna. I work as a career guidance counselor and a behavioral counseling consultant at Mayo College in Ajmer. As I mentioned, this session is largely trying to address, it's more of an experiential session. It's about all three of us have established career guidance programs in our schools, and it is put together basically to kind of showcase how and what decisions we have had to take while we made this journey, right? And as I think I attended another session, and they were also saying the same thing, that a career guidance program is not a set. It's not like the math curriculum that CBSE gives you, right? You're not delivering a set code of things. And it is really something that you create uniquely for your school and for yourself. So that is the context of this. To go to the first slide. We'll begin by setting a context, talking about the functions of a career guidance office, right? So in this slide, as you can see, the yellow band is basically career and college readiness, right? So this is all the work that you do, whether you start from grade 8, you're starting from grade 7, you're starting from grade 9, whenever it is that you're starting. So all the career and college readiness activities are the yellow band of function. The blue band of function is the actual college application process, so the nut and bolt of our work, right? So how do you get your LORs written, how do you make your applications, all of that. And the red band is stuff that most of us do not think about much when we start the career guidance program, but which we eventually and very quickly find out is a very integral part of the function if the program is to function effectively. Right, so we will be addressing all these three areas as we go along. Next slide, please. So, as I mentioned, this will be in terms of decisions and questions. The first decision, of course, is whether we need a career guidance program at all. Right, so a lot of schools, and mine included, when I joined Mayo College 3 years back, and I had my discussion with the school administrator. The thing was like, what will you do if you are a career counselor? I mean, there's not enough work for a career counselor in the school. And I was actually hired as a behavioral counseling consultant, right? And then when we started working and we realized, and I was able to kind of say that, listen, it's okay, but I think we need to start with career counseling also. And once that role was started and expanded upon, and the school administration was fantastically supportive of that, we realized that within a month, our school admission officer, she came back to me in a month and she said, ma'am, I'm inundated with questions about the career guidance activities. So for prospective parents, career guidance is a huge thing. So whether you are a small school, whether you are a national curriculum school, all of that aside, whether your students are applying abroad or not, career guidance actually is something that parents are looking for. And it's a very, very big draw. So that is one critical factor that you must consider when you're deciding whether you need a program at all or not. The second slide, please. The second thing is about many of us in the career guidance field were not really born into the field, right? Many of us are, like Prabha as a chemistry teacher, Shivangi started off as an admin officer. And you meet people who've transitioned into this role from being an English teacher, from being a psychology teacher, whoever it is, right? I think 2 or 3 things that you need to decide when you're making this big transition is, if you look at this is a snapshot of a career guidance counselor's. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. It's not actually visible.
Yeah, can you pin the slide and make it larger? So this is a snapshot of the weekly snapshot of what one of our calendars looks like, right? What you will notice is that the work goes on late into the evening. So this is one area, you are working in a school, but it's not a 8 to 2 or a 7 to 3 or whatever your school timing is. This role takes on the whole day, and you have to be willing to do that. The second thing you'll be willing to do is to network and collaborate, because this is a role, and this was something I had not thought about earlier. I'm a very shy person otherwise, but this is a role which really requires you to go out there and collaborate with universities, talk to parents, alumni. I find myself talking to all kinds of people, sometimes even the weirdest people I meet in the plane rides, and I'm like, okay, so how did you start? How did you get here? So I'm doing this and this, but how did you get here? And people give me really odd looks sometimes, and I have to really explain why I'm asking the question. But yeah, so you really need to be ready to collaborate. And the third thing you really need to be ready for is you need to be ready to learn, because this is not a fixed curriculum. So if you are a science teacher, you know your curriculum. 3 years, 5 years, you have it down pat. There's nothing more, right? But as a career counselor, you cannot even have it down pat for 1 month, because sincerely things are changing. Like you sleep and next morning another program has happened, right? So the changes are crazy, and you really need to be willing to take that into account. The next slide, please. And here I will ask Shivangi to step in. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Sapna. So, if you can pin this slide, okay. So, as we all know, and as Sapna has put the context, it's all about college counseling. Now, here we want to talk about how comprehensive you can make your program to be. Normally, college application and college counseling is all about college applications and getting the child there, whether it's India or abroad. So, you're looking, your main function when you just start off is the area is where you need to be quite proficient in the college application process, which would be the knowing your countries, knowing the eligibility criteria, knowing the documents, etc. But later on, when you have a little hang of it, you could dabble into other allied activities that are around this program, like having the psychometric testing, doing the test prep for Indian exams. Many times the school also wants to conduct that on their campus. There are many who ask for external people to come on the campus and do these activities. Writing the essays and the SOPs or other examination, how to do the AP, run an AP center, run a PSAT center. There are many such activities which fall into a college counseling office's lab along the way. So when we decide about it, you need to plan that, okay, for a couple of years I'm going to do this, then we are going to dabble into this. So please, one should have a timeline where one decides and what, with the management's, of course, inputs, you can decide on how much you want to take this office to. Coordinating with parents, other exams. There are loads of exams like the BMAT and the UKCAT and many exams that you think you can, the office can run.
Next slide.
Okay, so this again comes to the point that how much staff you have. And staffing is a very integral part of the whole process, because staffing is one of the key factors for the smooth functioning of the office. But again, it all depends on many things, like what is the student strength of your school. If you have a small cohort, then maybe you can manage it. According to statistics, it says that you need 100 to 1 counselor. For the 100 is not the graduating class, it's the cohort. So if you have a manageable student strength, yes, for by all means, decide your staff according to that. Another thing is the curriculum. Like in my school, we have three curriculums. We have the IB, we have the A levels, as well as the state board. So there it becomes a little difficult for one person to handle all the different curriculums and counsel them accordingly. But I am able to do so because there are very few who are applying from each of the boards. So that way we are able to still keep the cohort small and manageable. But if you have a large school and you have more than say 50-60 in each curriculum, then maybe you could look at the different staff requirements. Also, another thing that would affect the staffing would be how many students are applying abroad, or even India. I mean, out of what is the cohort looking like? I mean, how many are applying in India, how many are applying abroad, if there are mainly only USA. So then you don't need that many people who are looking at different aspects of the counseling office. Like I said earlier, how comprehensive you want the program to be. If you want all these allied areas, there are loads of allied areas like test prep, like essay writing, CV validation, profile building activities, external exams conducting. There are many such things. So if you want such a robust office, then you need more staff to look at it. And what are the expectations from the administration or the management? I would say, if your management thinks that they want a really well-functioning office, then yes, it is good idea to have some secretarial help and some other co-counselors who can look into different parts of the whole process and help you through. And next slide, please.
Next slide.
One other way to do that is either you are one person or you are using the staff from the school and hiring them, taking some 10-20% of their time. Just like I was an administrator and I started spending about 25-30% of my time in counseling, because that time we had just 6 students. Even Sapna was a consultant in doing behavioral counseling, and she stepped in for her school, and Ms. Prabha also did the same. She was a chemistry teacher. So because we know the school, we know the ethos of the school, we know the philosophy and the students, it was easier for us to step in. Similarly, you can also bring in other staff members to step in and kind of send them for an upgradation or for a PD programs, so that they also learn the language and the vocab of the counseling and are your support system. They are the extended counselors, like a maths teacher or a chemistry teacher or a economics teacher is always an extended counselor, because they will be able to talk in their class about different careers that can take place by doing economics to their class. So they've already done that little homework for them, for us, and when the students come, they have an idea that if I take economics, these are more or less some of the careers that I can follow. If you're hiring somebody completely new, then there are lots of qualifications now available which you can look for in a counselor, and it's always good to have somebody who has some background. Otherwise, you can always train somebody who is from within the school. Also, whether the staff should be exclusive or share other roles. Similarly, like I said, if you want to share roles of the teachers with you, then that is possible. Like I have a very interesting example of my PE teacher. I send him across to validate a lot of CVs when they come to us and say that, okay, we did this and we had this tournament and I have played state level and I have done national level. Then I send him running all around the place to at least validate some part of it, or even the fear of the fact that it is going to be validated gets a lot of ethical issues in place. So now Prabha ma'am will take you a little further on the content.
Thank you, Shivangi. First of all, I just hope that I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Okay, so in fact, I would like to say that there is no ideal content for a careers guidance and counseling program, and the method of delivery for all schools. It depends on the resources and the requirements of the school. The content would depend on, first of all, the curriculum or curricula adopted by the school. whether it is Cambridge or A-levels, CBSE, IB, CISCE, or simply the state boards, among others. One example I would like to take to show that the content depends on the curriculum of the school is the choice of subjects. Cambridge O and A-levels would require guiding students to choose subjects after grade 9 and grade 11, whereas, like in my school, whereas for the CBSE system, it would require gearing students towards choice of subjects only once, that is, at the end of grade 10. The content would also depend on the philosophy or the vision of the school and the administration. I hope you do agree with me that the vision of some school administration might be to have most of its student population aiming to study abroad and aggressively targeting Ivy League and grand universities, whereas other schools might be having a more Ghanaian outlook and focus on local issues. Thus, the content will vary according to whether students should be prepared for entrance exams such as JEE, GRE, AIEEE to study locally in India, for example, or for tests such as the ACT, the SAT, the BMAT, UCAT to study abroad. And the content will also depend on how comprehensive is the program. In some schools, career guidance is provided only as a tool to access higher education after secondary schooling. But in others, it is much more comprehensive, helping the student develop competencies in self-knowledge, education, and occupational exploration, and career planning through a more holistic approach. Regarding the method of delivery, though there are general methods such as workshops, interactive sessions with experts, resource persons, alumni, university representatives, at the end of the day, you own your program and method of delivery. Sapna, Shivani, and myself have been running career fairs in our schools, but it is not conducted in the same way. Shivani, can you please share with us how you own your program for this component of career education?
Yeah, thank you, Prabha. Actually, in my school, we had because we have this variety of curriculums. We were not able to have a proper counseling curriculum, which normally schools have for different boards due in the timetable. So what we did was we had career fairs, basically country fairs, and we had a USA fair, UK, Canada, etc. That somehow then phased out and fizzled out because there were many children who said, no, I'm not interested in this, not interested in that. So that brought us to, we thought of another way to keep the students engaged, so made it a subject fair, say engineering. So all universities across the world that I could contact, even India, had an engineering fair, had an arts fair, had an art pod, had a economics fair, things like that. So that kind of created a buzz around the school and interest that, okay, even if it was not USA, it was UK, it was Canada, it was France, it was Spain. So different countries in one, for one subject. Also we had, we involved the parents and had a career talk every Friday. So if, especially, and every Friday they would talk about some career. We have so many parents, 1,000 parents, and kind of club them and ask them, and we would get that going. And we had about good career talks. But then just before this fair, we used to have a whole week of career talks, whole week of different professions, all of engineering, say all of art, and like a fashion designer or an artist or a singer or somebody who's in interior designing. So it built the tempo around the fair. So that's the way we did it in our school, and that's going really well.
And Sapna, what about your own method of delivery?
So I'll begin by saying that actually what I think the main message we're trying to give is there's no right or wrong way of doing it, right? So I'm somebody who really likes to join courses, study and stuff. And everywhere the best practice that was given to me was that you must go to every class once a week, right? And now I come from a school where we have very small sections. So 15 kids in a section, 20 kids in a section, and 5 or 6 sections in every class. And I tried that model, it just did not work for me. So I could not be doing 30 classes a week and then also doing the amount of individual work I wanted to do, or reaching out to universities, or doing all my organization and getting everything together, right? And I said, okay, this may be a best practice, but it's not working for me. So what we instead did was that we identified pockets within my school calendar. So my school calendar, one pocket so of course I asked, like, I want 2 days here, 2 days at the beginning of the session and stuff, and then it's a residential school, tons of things happening, and the academic head is saying, listen, I don't have that time, I can't give you 2 days in the beginning with grade 10th, they have their board stuff to cover and all that. So we came to a happy marriage where they had certain days in their calendar in which they did not know what to do with the students, So there's a big activity happening. We have this big round square conference with grade 7 shows for grade 8, and the whole school is hugely involved. And that time they don't know what to do with 9th and 10th. They have to lose them because they don't have enough staff. I said, okay, give them to me on those 2 days, right? So we've developed what we call now a boot camp model, where every 3 or 4 months we do intense capsules. So it saves me on my time. I know what I have to deliver to them. And then it's just a matter of kind of watching whether they're doing what they had to do. So we literally give them the curriculum for the next 3 or 4 months at one go, and then they follow it up. Of course, there are downsides to this, but it seems to work for me as of now, right? So owning your program and making the necessary changes and doing it the way it suits you is primary, and how it suits your school. Next slide. So Prabha ma'am, back to you.
Thank you, Sapna. So as to whether you need a budget, yes, of course, you do. Given on the slide here are some heads under which a budget is needed. An obvious one is the actual furniture, computer, printer, etc. Budget is also needed for membership, such as for the international ACAC, or simply becoming a center for UCAS, for direct submission to UK universities. Besides this, you will need money to host universities for career fairs and posters. Another important head is training and upskilling of the counselor and other staff involved in career guidance activities. Many others do not have a budget. For non-fee-paying schools like mine, setting aside a budget may definitely not be an option, but it is important to keep asking. Until you do not get a budget, make use of all free resources available to you. Universities, agencies like the USIEF, British Council, are always willing to step in to support schools. As to whether it should be a separately charged service, depends on the policy of the school. Some fee-paying schools already include it in their fees, whereas others charge separately, depending on the service being offered, for example, organizing the SAT exams, monitoring essay writing, etc. So now over to you for the very important step of how to stay organized.
Right, thank you, Prabha. So just to talk about the budget thing, I think this is a big question that we were handling in our school, whether we should be charging people extra, right? And of course, it's a policy decision. And I know of schools who are actually making money out of the career guidance department. So it's actually not something which is taking away money, it's actually something generating funds. And it depends on your school how you want to look at this, right? For talking about staying organized, so this is of course I think the most important requirement. Most of us in career guidance, unfortunately, at least as of now, are either single people departments, and there's another session going on with one-man army, right? So that's exactly how it is for most of us. Some of us have one extra half-time secretary thrown at us and stuff like that. But we are really understaffed. So time is really essential for us, right? So staying organized, I'm going to talk about 4 large areas here. The next slide, please. So record keeping is the student record keeping specifically. Example of how I'm doing my record keeping right now. It can be done on a paid platform. It can be done on a free platform. I think Google Suite offers some amazing MS Teams offers some amazing options to be doing this free of charge also. You meet students at different points in their journey through the high school, and keeping a record of what was discussed, and you can really see the trajectory. A child who's talking to you about a career in music in 9th may start talking about physics in 11th, and may talk about hotel management in 12th, and to be able to kind of pull that out is really interesting. The second thing a good student record keeping does for you is it saves you from controversies. Career guidance, you will soon discover a lot of questions come your way. A lot of people, parents will come disgruntled saying, you did not tell us this, or this did not happen. So a good record keeping system is very useful. How you treat the confidentiality of the record is your choice. So it's a school policy. Whether you will share it with parents on a regular basis, not share it, whatever your decision is. But a record keeping is important. The next slide, please. So the second is data management. So as a counselor, you maintain a lot of student data. So transcripts, LORs, essays, this is just one example of what we do, right? And I, for one, find it very useful to keep this forever. So batch-wise information, so that when successive students come, you can literally pull it out and see, okay, so this was this child's profile, this is the kind of essay was written. You don't have to share it with the child, but you yourself know where this kid stands in relation to your earlier applicants. It's very useful data. Again, it helps a lot in safeguarding you. If you have got all the information, you can pull it out. It's very useful. The next slide, please. Appointment management. As I said, time is really crucial to a career counselor. And this is something I learned during the pandemic. A Google Calendar, absolutely the most wonderful tool that was ever discovered, I think. And if you marry it up with something like a Calendly, there must be other apps like that. It's just so interesting how much you can get out of your day and how easily. So if you generate little time slots for yourself, my mornings are for universities, my afternoons are for students, my evenings are for my own self-development, learning new things, or meeting my colleagues, or whatever it is that you get to do. And just have those, and you can share those links. So now my students have a link which they know they can use to take an appointment whenever they want. The parents have another link, the universities have another link, so it's just very handy. And I know that I'm not double booking myself, and I'm not going to forget anything. So that's very handy. And the last thing I'll talk about is the calendar of activities. So career guidance is actually one of the few departments which actually has its own schedule, which can look very different than your school's yearly schedule. And when you start out, they may not be in sync with each other, right? And if you are starting a new department, you really need to, I think one of the biggest, toughest battles, at least for me, has been trying to get the school schedule in sync with the career guidance schedule. So, shifting the midterm assessments from August, where everybody wants to prepare for the SATs, to somewhere before or later, having the annual day shifted up a bit so that it doesn't clash with the big deadline. So stuff like that. It's like small tweaking stuff, but it takes time to run that through. And if you are able to provide this calendar at the beginning of the year, when your school is developing their calendar, then the school administration can really look at it and work upon that. Yeah. And next slide. Prabha ma'am.
Yes, that was very insightful. That was very helpful, Sapna. As to what policies to put in place, having formal policies in place for career counseling is necessary, as what we do affects students' college admissions, and it is very important to not have room for any form of bias and controversies. One such area where clear-cut policy can be very useful is the system for crediting grades. And we witnessed this especially during the pandemic period, where there was an absence of a system for predicting grades, and we have seen students doing self-report of their grades, or simply just giving grades that they feel that they deserve. Whether your school decides that the predicted grades will be based on the performance of the students in grade 11, also like at Shirangi's and Sapna schools, or you decide that they should be based on a mock exam only. Like in my school, the decision is yours and should be taken keeping in mind your school's needs and environment. But having them clearly spelled out will ensure smooth functioning of your school. The policies can also be changed. For example, for myself, after seeing Shivangi's policy on predicted grades, I'm definitely considering changing mine to a similar, more relevant formula because it's going to benefit the students. As to whether students should see the predicted grades, most schools avoid it unless the student himself, herself, should self-report the grades. This avoids unpleasant and unethical situation where the student or parent requests the teacher or school to review the grades with respect to the university requirements. As to other policies to be put in place, Shivangi will be taking over now.
Thank you, Prabha. Regarding policies, one of the main things I think we need to understand is that we are having these policies. It's not just to be very strict about something, but we are creating these policies because you want to safeguard yourself and also inform the students and the parents about certain rules. See, they don't know the rules about or early decisions or early actions or predicted grades or LORs. So it's very difficult to have them coming up to you and arguing about you, and to stop the controversies that revolve around the application process and the important elements. We have a policy for that. So even for the LOR, it's a good idea to have a policy on certain major things first when you come in as a counselor. One is the predicted grades, the second is the LOR, because they are very controversial. So what we do is we don't allow the students to see their LOR, but we give them this kind of a brag sheet. And this kind of states their strengths, weaknesses, what they did in the class, in and out of that classroom. Say if it is physics, then what they contributed in the class, what they have done, other activities outside the classroom. So everything is in there. So they kind of know their LOR, but they don't know exactly when it is ready and printed. So we have a policy on that. So whether you want that as a policy or not is for you and the school management or the administration to decide, or your your coordinator to decide. But it's good to have a policy around that. Another big area is the validation of the CVs, because normally school children inflate their CVs a lot. So how do you validate them? So we, like I said, I gave you the example of the PE teacher, that we make him run around and validate things. I generally have a viva with them about all their, ask them random questions and catch them off guard if possible. I think over the years we've learned that art of catching them off guard of certain things. And also, kind of, if you want, you can put a cap that okay, 2 or 3 only out of the classroom activities will be validated as a school, the rest is for you to write about it. So there are many ways to go around it, but the idea is to put it in black and white so that later on you don't have any conflicts or controversies arising from this. Whether student indiscretions will be reported. Sometimes if they are very severe ones, if you have students jumping off the wall or something, then maybe you can, that's a one-time thing, but we don't do that. But if there is some continuous, over the years you have some record of a student not being, in disciplinary actions have been taken, there are many places in the application process through which you can inform the admission officer that this is the way, this is what the child is all about. I mean, it should not be generally all negative or something, but a few things you can very subtly mention and put forth that. Next slide, please. Yes. So there is another big area where you need to discuss and decide on whether you want to have external counselors. So many a times it happens in schools that many students go to external counselors. Now you need to have a policy on that whether you want to work along with them, you want to just not work with them, or you want to just ignore them. So you need to take a stand on it and let the stand be known to the parents in the orientations that you have from the beginning, so that later on it doesn't happen that okay, my counselor has given me this LOR and this is the way I want it printed. it may not work for you, it may not work for me, it may not work for, it's not acceptable because many things may not be correct which is written. Sometimes it's always perfect. So you got to decide that which, if yes, then which ones and to what extent. So that is one big area. Also a policy around external agencies. So this is specific to say test prep or essay writing or profile building. If those kind of agencies are coming to you saying that okay, we will offer these services, whether you want to showcase them to your students or not is another decision that you will have to take. So these are some important policies. And communication with parents. So this is we have put a sample of an agreement that we have with parents, that a tripart agreement that between the student, parent and the counselor, that on say early decision, on all these matters, on predictive grades, on LORs, on CVs, so that everything is very clear before they start the process. So later on, it's a very smooth process for us, and these little arguments can become quite big if we don't have a policy around it. That takes us to the fact that it will be an ideal situation if at some point or time in your office you can develop a school counseling handbook. We've got a sample here, it's probably the ICAT one, right? So there are many school counseling handbooks. You can put all the policies in there and probably hand them out. It could be put on the website for everyone to see, so they know what what is the policy around the college application process for the school. If you're coming from, or if you're taking a role in a very set school, which is like Sapna school, which is very old, 100 plus years old. So there are many existing policies like about the exams, or about when the events are going to happen, or when the annual day is going to happen. So that is the time when you have to make sure that you start making, and you will have to tweak those policies a little and move them up and down so that it can benefit all. So next slide, please. Yes. So now something.
So first, to go back to the policies thing, the handbook. That's an amazing practice that a few schools. I know I'm making mine since the last 2 years. It's not yet ready because there's so much of work in the handbook, right? So what I did was that because the handbook was just not coming out, it was just taking so long, that at least we got the parents' pledge and the students' pledge ready. And what that essentially has is, it has a deadline document, like a deadline calendar. So because last year I faced this a lot, parents said, so you'll be telling the students the deadlines, and this is a residential school, so usually I just work with students. But this year they were at home, right? And then suddenly parents like, but I did not know there was a deadline. So this time we got it signed by the parent also. So now I've told them all, you take a printout, paste it where you can see it every single day, so that you know what the deadlines are, because we're not going to change. Okay, so how to get equipped? Now this is the actual nail and hammer, right? And this is what at least I struggled with in the beginning. So how do you do everything? So first is the physical space, right? Where do you locate yourself? Would you like to be near the library? Because that's usually a space where you can put all your brochures, you can get some librarians' help to organize your books and organize your university brochures, and there's empty space there. Or you want to be near the computer lab because a lot of your work is online, right? And you want students to go online, search for universities. So there's that computer lab space. Or do you want to be where the classes are? So where grade 11th and 12th really, where their classrooms are. So do you want to have an office there so that they can, literally walk in when they like? Because in the beginning, at least that's what I face. In the beginning, students are not really walking in that often, right? And because they really don't know what you are there for right at the beginning. So if you're right there in their face, then it's just easier for them to walk in. I know that I was located right near grade 12th, and these kids used to talk between their classes, to sit, how a boys' residential school is, sit on the steps and be gurus of everybody, and I would literally just pick them up from there, come, I haven't had a talk with you in ages. So that worked very well. The other part is the application platform, whether you need it, whether you want it, whether you have the budget for it. There are many kinds of application platforms. If you are thinking of getting one, make sure you speak to schools which are using them. So, and I think all of us, I've had tons of people call me up about C Alpha, which is what we're using, but everybody is using different platforms. So just talk about it, find out first-hand experiences, and then decide which one is useful for you, because they differ greatly in the way they function. Creating a school profile is the next thing. It's really required. For many schools, if you're starting out new, the administration tends to push, I don't mean you, Siddharth, you're very clued in, but usually tends to push a prospectus as the school profile, or the one-page handout, which is their marketing kind of a thing. But the school profile is a different requirement, it's a different need, right? It's trying to set the context of your school for the university. So just for an example, if in my school we don't do any SAT preps, my students do not get any outside help because they're living 24/7 with us. Say 1350 is the average SAT score, supposing. And a child has got a 1410. Now that child is above average in my school's context. But in Shivangi's school, 1450 may be the average, right? And a 1410 student is somewhere, just there, right? So the context setting is what the profile does. And that is something that you have to explain to the administration if they're not prudent about it, because they get a little jittery about putting anything which is less than perfect and on anything which is publishable, right? The next slide, please. Again, how to get equipped. So the softer aspects of it, learning the vocabulary. There are a lot of acronyms and phrases and short terms and stuff that you need to get used to. If you are not an IB or an international board school, even things like transcripts and stuff, you don't really understand what they mean, those words. And it takes time. And give yourself, I think one very experienced counselor who met me in the beginning said, Sapna, you're trying to go too fast. It will take 3 years, relax. You will learn it eventually. So don't worry if you feel you don't know something, you will learn it eventually. Acquiring tech skills, I already mentioned that, so I'm not going to talk. I'm going to talk about one very important thing though. As a career counselor, your biggest challenge is that your students don't fit the school classification. So A section, B section, C section means nothing to you, because you would have kids with different needs in each of those sections. So the Google Classroom or an MS Teams classroom really comes in handy, because you can divide your children according to that, which the school doesn't allow you to do, right? So it's very, very handy to know that. Creating handouts, very useful again. So stuff which you find that you're repeating it very often is stuff that you can make handouts about. So if I'm applying to the US, what are the documents I need? Or if I'm looking at economics, what are the possible courses or my career paths? Or in my school, BCom or BBA. It was such a big question. I think every second child asked me that. So I made a handout around that. So whatever you see that you are getting repeated questions about, create a handout and keep it handy. Acquiring a career library. Many of us have those bookshelves and stuff. In the digital world, so we have created a digital career library now, which all our students can access. It's been really useful. So students can literally just read it on their screens. Any book that we have in the library. Then the system for storage of brochures. You will get a lot of this every year. It is too much of it coming in. And then you have to organize it, and then you have to throw them all away the next year because you get a new set, right? And it's crazy the amount of man hours that takes, the organization. So a system for filing it, a system where the students can really access it and put it back in place very easily. And of course, in the digital world, if you can do this digitally, and we're working on it, let's see if that's possible. But yeah, so this is very useful. Next slide. And the last part of how to get equipped are the various memberships and the stuff that you need to get. And this is especially relevant if your students are applying abroad, right? The SEEP code is something which gives you a unique identity number, by which I think across the world universities recognize the SEEP code, but especially in the USA and Canada, it's very useful. If a lot of your kids are applying to UK, then you can apply for the buzzword or become a UCAS center. I think most of you are now aware of that. But it just makes your life much more easier, and you can make sure that your applications that are going from your school are ethically done and there are no agents involved in that. Making the school a center for various tests. Again, something that would be very fruitful in the long run. It can be an open center or a closed center. Open Center is open to other students outside of your school. It can help you generate money. A closed center is for your own school students. It can be nice, safe and happy. So however you want to place it. Then of course all these tests that we talked about, getting relevant memberships, ICAC, NACAC, other memberships is very useful. This is slightly expensive and you may not get the permissions to do it in the beginning, but it's a great platform for networking, great platform to learn and to upskill yourself, so that's very useful. And then the accreditation, it's a newer phenomena, at least in India, the IC3 accreditation. I think what it really does, it gives you credibility and it helps you standardize your processes and procedures, so that's very handy. The next slide. Yeah, Prabha.
Thank you, Sapna. So now that Sapna, Shivangi and myself have taken you through most of the stages, through most of the steps in setting up our career guidance program, we have come to the last question. Who are the stakeholders who we should be working with? So just to avoid any technical glitch, in fact we wanted to involve all of you much more by conducting a poll, but just to avoid any technical glitch, we'll skip the poll. And I would just like to share with you that the stakeholders with whom we are working, with whom you need to work, will be the management, the students having different intellectual, emotional requirements, students having special needs, the alumni, and the counselors, both at national, international level, universities. And I would just like to add, when I'm talking about counselors, it definitely helps us to have a better career guidance program. For example, at the end of this session, at the end of this presentation, I've definitely transformed the school counselor because I have learned so much through this session. And while we were preparing this session together, Shivangi, Sapna, and myself. So I would like to say a big thank you for your attention. And Sapna, I will invite you to do the winding up and talk about the takeaways of this session.
Right. Next slide, please. So we'll just close actually. I think we're running a little short of time here. I think if you've made the decision to start a new career guidance program or you've decided to become a career guidance counselor, great. It's a wonderful community out here. Everybody is very willing to share. Just join, read, adjust, adapt, learn new things, organize yourself, and generally just be ready. It's a wonderful journey. We are open to questions and answers. Anybody has them? Next slide. Yeah, please. Yeah, just come to this.
So, firstly, a great presentation, Sapna ma'am.
Thank you.
And apart from whatever you did show, because you belong to a school which has got a good legacy, and I have seen your alumni LinkedIn page also. There's a lot of activity even during the pandemic stage. It was there. Do you have any place where you're documenting probably alumni experiences for your students, and just like you have a career portal, do you have any alumni portal as such?
Yeah, so that's actually an excellent question and something I've been working on. Honestly, we don't have it yet. We are working towards it. And see, a legacy school comes with a lot of advantages, but there's a lot of baggage also, right? So there's an alumni department which has been doing things a certain way for 140 years. And then you suddenly come along and you say you need these things also, and they're like, hello, we're not ready for this. So it takes a little time. But yes, we're totally trying to do that. In fact, this weekend we are inviting alumni, and now what we've done is that the housemasters, so because the housemasters are a big part in our school, right? So now they are taking it on because they know the alumni since years. Like I've been in the school for 3 years, but that's baby, in my school. Because the people who've been here for 30 years, whose parents have taught here, who've studied here, so it's like crazy the amount of people they know. So I'm letting them take the alumni part forward because they really know them much better than I ever will. Right? So yeah, it's something we're really struggling with. There was a question at the back also, and ma'am, you can go ahead.
An excellent presentation, Sapna. It was very informative actually for us, like we're starting to set up a department in all the campuses of City Montessori School, as you know of. It's a huge school in Lucknow. So what I want to ask you is like how to introduce profile building exercises in the schools, in the campuses, seeing the the academic curriculum so tightly fit and getting the children out to be part of to enhance their profiles and doing something more other than the extracurricular activities, the community work, which I'm really passionate about. How to introduce that and how to motivate our children to step out and do something for the community.
True.
Not exactly just to showcase on their applications, but something for their own self, growth.
True. Another excellent question. Though I have to admit that for my school that was not a problem because I think all we do is profile building. I mean, I literally have to say, okay, can I get some academic work also, right? But I totally understand your question that for day schools, which you have students for a very limited time during the day, and there is that much syllabus to be transacted, and what else, and how you do it. And I think somebody summed it up beautifully in another session I attended, where they said, make use of the middle years. The 6, 7, 8, where there is really a lot of scope of playing with the curriculum. And if it could be done, because say in what we have done at Mayo now is that we do not, though we are a CBSE school, till 8 we follow our own curriculum because CBSE allows you that, right? They don't have anything set for 8 till 8. So that in that curriculum itself, we have really put these things into as part of the curriculum. And I think that's really helped us. So if in 6, 7 and 8, you can make use of students at that time to do other things and make that part of the curriculum. Even you can teach English via theatre. You can teach, you can teach so much via all these different profile building activities as we call them.
Can you elaborate on this with a few examples?
Yeah. So I'll give you one example. We are now doing something that we call cross-sectional. I forget the term for it. Anyway, so what is happening is that supposing we're dealing with the concept of the moon, right, for grade 5th. So the history teacher will talk about the moon in context of maybe a battle that was, fought in the moonlight. The Hindi teacher takes them up, makes them see the moon, and write poems about that. And then there would be, because we have that telescope, and then they would go in the night and they would look at the thing, and the physics teacher would talk to them about that, or the geography teacher. And the kids are loving this, right? And when they are doing this, they are also doing a lot of their creative writing, they're doing plays around the moon, they're doing other things around it. So a lot of things get done via doing this, right? And then of course, when community service comes along, academic can be tied in very beautifully. So you can tell the students that, okay, so this is what we are going to be, supposing you're taking the concept of say metals, right? So you flip it, let them learn the metals. This is your topic for the day. Come back and present it to your class, or come back and present it to a school, an underprivileged school that you're working with. And that kind of work is being done, I think, in a lot of schools, and is being done very successfully. So that's something we can do, I guess. Yes, ma'am.
I'll just add to that in my school, because I run all the 3 curriculums, and IB of course has CAS, which is the community action and service component in it. We do it, but we made it compulsory for the A-level students and the state board to do that as well. So actually we are making it compulsory for all across the streams to do the CAS activity, which is exclusive to IB by all, so that automatically builds their profile. Plus we take them out for a community service project. Every year we take them to different places, like we have adopted a village in Cambodia, so we take them out every year. So that is one cultural as well as a service project. We have adopted that village and that school, and we do regular activities there. We also teach the underprivileged in from 4 to 6. So my school ends at 3 o'clock. So from 4 to 6 we have neighboring slum children come over, and it is compulsory for all the children to participate at least once a week in it, teaching them something. It could be dance, it could be music, it would. So where your question about community service is concerned, that is another way also to do it, and incorporate it in the curriculum and make it very compulsory for them. There are no options for it. Of course, the other things like they want to do some big project and some research work and all that they have to find their own contacts, because sometimes we don't. We do help them from our parent body, but it becomes a little difficult sometimes. Yeah.
I think ma'am's been waiting for a long time.
I wanted to share something. Somebody asked for the alumni portal.
Yeah.
We just recently discovered it's a very economical portal called as WAB.
WAB?
Yeah. I'll give you the email ID also. It's sales @WAAVE.com. This is the email ID that pays. It's good. It's there for corporates and for industries, and they've inculcated it for our school, and the team is super fast. Within a month's time, we got everything fitted. They just need an Excel sheet from you, nothing else.
Are they expensive?
No.
Very economical.
Very economical. I think about
I love this. Thank you so much.
Maximum 10 to 15,000 a year.
Wow.
Not more than that. VAAVE.
Right. Great. Thank you so much for this. Yeah. Please.
इधर फॉलो करो उधर फटाफट करो.
Hi, thank you three of you. It was a great presentation, and big hi to Prabhat. She knows me. Hi Prabhat. So one comment, we have also started the handbook last year, and it's really taking time for us to finish it. And the second part we need to translate in French also.
No wow. Okay, good luck.
Long time. The question about the
sales@wag.com.
VAAVE.
But it's sales.
Saleswag.com.
@wag.com.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, Mari. Let us just finish and we'll take it up.
So again, to collect the data, our biggest challenge is the students when they leave the school,
They don't,
they don't come.
Right.
It's really possible if they take a gap year or something, change their mind,
Right.
what measure they are going to do.
So I'm struggling with that, honestly. What I have incorporated this year, I hope it works. Of course, I'm also very new to this, right? We have dedicated a day. So we have made, I think, 7th August, a day when all our alumni who passed on that year, so the graduating batch, will connect with us virtually. The school director will be there, so everybody they would like to meet will be there. So we're kind of thinking of it like a program. So like alumni come back, we have an alumni, we have this amazing alumni network, right? They love coming back to Mayo. So we're thinking of this as a virtual alumni get together, which is only for the graduating batch, and where we are also going to be circulating the form and all of that, right? So I'll let you know how that goes.
Absolutely. No,
Yeah.
we're working on that.
You're working on that?
No, I just didn't. The other question on the ethics, how we can introduce or bring this in the counseling, because what happens in my school, the students, whatever admission they get, they put the fees and they block those seats. Whatever I tell, and if one or two students just follow not to do that, the other parents will come. Okay, he has done it, they've done it, and they block all the
I know. I think we're short on time, so I'll quickly address the ethics issue. Yes, it's a big thing. But what I'll also say is, at least if you're already established school, give yourself and your school some time to adapt to you. If you try to do it too quickly, it will not work. Give yourself some time. I think it's been 2 years down for the program. Now we're at a point where we're going to start talking about the ethics of how to write an LOR, right? Because earlier it was being done in a certain way and you want to change it, but if you come in right in the beginning and say, this is wrong, the whole faculty will stand up in arms against you, right? So you really need to take it one question at a time. Once you establish your credibility, you establish your relationships with people, and then take it forward, right? Honey.
I wanted to just
I just wanted to know a little bit about contents of the handbook. So what I understand is we need some policies in place. Let's say we mentioned the pledges there. We mentioned the curriculum grade-wise, what we have to look forward to in that year. What else? I mean, probably we could also the handout material we could actually
The handout
place it
could be
in
included.
in the handbook.
So what I'm thinking, Dhwani, at least in my school, what I'm thinking of doing is instead of having one big handbook, have year-wise handbook. Okay, because what happens is kids tend to lose things. You know, you give it back, you give it in 9th, and they've left it. And then if you give the same book in 10th, they don't want to look at it. So I'm thinking of doing 4 different handbooks, and each handbook would have the policy a little like an overview. So it's almost like a curriculum in a handbook. Yeah. So an ethics handbook and then a curriculum-wise handbook again 9th and 10th. And I'm thinking I'll also leave some blank pages there because we have all these activities and kids need to make notes. So if everything is like in the same place where they can just kind of refer to it. I think we are finished with our
idea
time.
on that. So we had made a big handbook, but we made the big handbook, but what we did like SAT, we put the resources. So we put the links. So we brought that handbook in just one page and put all those links so that whoever wants to
That's
go
a great
can
idea.
decide.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabha ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you everyone for being such a great audience, and thank you Prabha for joining us from there.